We are All Souls Unitarian Universalist Church. I'm the Reverend Ron Phares. My pronouns are he, him. Welcome to this space. Thank you for helping us light our chalice and sonically introduce us to our hour together. I want to take this opportunity to say hi to all the folks viewing from home. We are glad that you are here too. Your presence is felt. This morning, I'd just like to drop right in, if you don't mind. So settle yourself in your seat, get in a comfortable position, and let's find our way to our breath. You might close your eyes and just connect with that cycle of respiration. Let the breath feel good, refreshing. Somehow paying attention to it makes it sweeter. In fact, I think we find that paying attention to anything makes it sweeter. In fact, as you open your eyes now, giving yourself a little bit of space, you might pay attention to where you are. You might notice the light in the room, or the way the chalice flickers, or the way the shadow of the fan passes over your neighbors. You might notice smells, how you feel in your body today, how your body feels in this air. And perhaps paying attention to it makes it sweeter. One way to attention is intention. And as you know, recently we've been inviting you all to set an intention for our time together. It's my assumption that you have a reason for being here. I mean, not like existentially, although that too, but presently, in the moment, that you chose to come this morning for some reason. Maybe some question or something that you're trying to figure out beyond just the habitual. So I'd ask you now to search your soul in hopes of discovering your purpose here today. What is your intention for being here? And then, because our body remembers very well, maybe set that intention into a gesture. So you could tap your foot, touch your elbow, pull on your earlobe, whatever. The gesture that embodies your intention will help you pay attention and make your time more sweet.
Good morning again. I am Kathleen Brannan. My pronouns are she and her. It's our choices, Harry, that show what we truly are far more than our abilities. Decent advice for an 11-year-old fictional wizard, but really now. What do my choices reveal about me? I have made some positive ones in my life, and I have made some real doozies. One of the choices I made about 10 years ago was to walk through those doors here at All Souls for the first time. Having wandered through a variety of religious experiences, mostly in the Christian tradition, trying to find a spiritual space where I could be my most authentic self. Remember, not all who wander are lost. So on Sundays, I would find my way to an empty seat, probably about where Lynn is sitting right now, near the back and near the outside wall. I listened, I observed, and I wondered if this congregation really meant what it said about beloved community, covenant, and all are welcome. You see, becoming UU was really a new adventure for me. So I guarded what I shared with all these very outspoken people in this congregation. I read the group and did my best to fit in. It's kind of what I do in a variety of settings. I keep the peace, but did I have peace? I didn't rock the boat, but that wasn't fun. Maybe not the best word, fun, but it wasn't an adventure. What I didn't have was peace within me. So I decided that I needed to own my own truth and speak my truth, even if it was uncomfortable or perhaps even offended someone. That includes being honest about the Christian sources and practices that inform my efforts to do some good in this world. But it also includes my openness to listen and learn, to be curious and practice other traditions that enhance my spiritual life. Being willing to be honest compassionately, even when my experience bumps up against another's whose experience is so different from mine, can be rocky, or a roller coaster experience. Maybe that's where the fun comes in. But I am better. I am more at peace for being my authentic self. I guess it's never too late to be me. You see, I have found peace as a consequence of being authentic and owning my truth. All Souls truly is an interfaith community. All are welcome. So I'd like to leave you with this from a book by Thich Nhat Hanh, who wrote in 1995. The book is called Living Buddha, Living Christ. He says that the most basic principle of interfaith dialogue is that dialogue must begin, first of all, within oneself. Our capacity to make peace with another person and with the world depends very much on our capacity to make peace with ourselves. Thank you. So today, as we share the offering basket, my hope is that All Souls can be a sacred and safe space for each of us to be our authentic selves, and we can bring the willingness to be in dialogue with each other into the world that so desperately needs healing and compassion. Our ushers will pass the baskets, and directions for giving are on the screen.
I invite you now to feel for the beating of your hearts. As we draw in breath, we call in the stories to find a home in the soil of our being. So this is not a Christmas story, though it does begin and end on Christmas. And the faces of this story are Christian and English, but the bones of this story are older than both religion or nation. The bones are old, and its voice, its truth, its wisdom might be eternal. It is, in fact, a story of the inevitability of nature, life, creation as a force in the universe, otherwise known as the green. So it is right, I think, when the buds are thrusting up from their death, reasserting creation, laughing at our worried fatalism, it is right to tell this tale in the spring. And yet, It begins on the Christmas feast in Arthur's hall at his round table, a hall full of heroes. And into this festive and auspicious knot rides a terrifying marvel, a giant of a knight upon a giant of a steed, both green, maybe even made of green, a sprig of holly growing from its shoulder, a tiny flower puffing at the corner of the knight's eye, all emanating an eerie green spectral glow. This is the perfect fusion of authority and creation. Needless to say, he got their attention. His voice was the sound of bending wood. I challenge any of you heroes. Who will face me? It will be a game. However, whoever accepts my challenge must promise to seek out the Green Chapel 1 year from today and accept whatever blow you might bestow upon me in return. So if you've ever been challenged by a green knight on a giant green horse, you might understand that none of the legendary heroes stepped forward. They'd seen a thing or two already in their questing, and at this point, they knew better. The one who stepped forward was, in fact, not a knight. It was Arthur's nephew, Gawain, who had not seen a thing or two. The only thing he'd seen was these heroes, and he wanted to be one. He wanted to be a knight. He wanted that reputation and esteem. He thought it was honor. And so he ratcheted up his courage and prepared to duel. Yet when Gawain stepped into the arena with the Green Knight, instead of fighting, the giant avatar of creation leaned forward, stretched out his neck, as if inviting Gawain to chop off his head. And Gawain saw no way out of this trap, right? Like, if he didn't chop off the head, he wouldn't meet the challenge. He would be a coward. But if he did chop off the head, in a year's time, he would lose his own. What he did not realize was that he had already been playing a game. And in fact, that very question was part of it. And the Green Knight was here to make that game plain. But it wasn't plain yet, not to Gawain. So Gawain, in fact, lopped off the Green Knight's noggin, which would have been the most horrific thing any one of the feasters would have seen that day, except that the Green Knight then stood up, headless, and grabbed his head from the floor, mounted his mighty steed, and held it held high like a lantern, laughed as he rode out from the hall. A year passed, and with some understandable misgivings, Gawain seeks the Green Chapel now, where the blow he delivered is promised to be returned. But he's got an ace up his sleeve or around his middle. His mother or aunt or something was Morgane Le Fay, wizard sister of Arthur himself, and apprentice to half-wild Merlin. She made him a magic belt, or shall we say a stole. To protect him, this magic would protect him from all harm. And so it does, for his quest, as all quests must, goes awry. A number of bad decisions lead to adventures and tests of mettle and of character, tests he frequently failed. But protected by the stole, he survived. This entire moral trial, by the way, is framed and underscored by an answer that he received when he asked a stranger where the Green Chapel was, and the stranger replied, "You're in it." Which, of course, Gawain did not understand, failing to see the game he was in once again. And so it was that not until he found a chapel overgrown with moss and pulled apart by ivy, a birch tree growing from the chancel, that he found at last the Green Knight, bathed as he was in his eerie green glow. It was Christmas. Have you come to complete the game? I have. Then kneel. But Gawain could not live up to his promise. Even knowing he wore the magic stole was no comfort in the face of this giant. 3 times he knelt and lowered his head, only to cower when chuckling the Green Knight made to strike. 3 times he cowered. At last Gawain steeled himself. I have the stole, I won't be harmed. But still, before he bowed his head, just to make sure, he wondered to the knight, is this really all there is? Now, if you're the Green Knight, the face of nature itself, this is a very strange question. And so the giant replied, what else ought there be? The question, what else ought there be, as some questions do, induced a vision in Gawain. He saw and felt and experienced something else. A life that could be were he to choose immunity. A life where he became king. Though because he has lived his life in the shadow of his self-interested cowardice, protected by the belt, he continues to be beset by bad decisions, betrayal, and eventually the collapse of that glorious kingdom. And of course, at the end of this envisioned life, lived in the shadow of self-interest, honor as far away as ever, he dies anyway. Shaken for the vision, but wiser, he removes his magic stole, sets it aside. I'm ready, he says. The Green Knight, well pleased, squeezes Gawain's shoulder. Well done, my brave knight. Giving to Gawain a now rightly knightly title. Now, nature smiles that smile and raises up his great axe. Off with your head. The bones of this story are old. Its truth eternal. You cannot go against nature, because if you do go against nature, that's a part of nature too, and there's no new tale to tell. And so it is proper to tell it when the buds are thrusting up from their death, reasserting creation, laughing at our worried fatalism. It is right to tell it in spring. So I invite you once again to feel for your heart. As we draw in breaths, we give thanks for all that sustains us. As we send out breath, we give thanks for the stories we carry within. What else ought there be? That's how the Green Knight responds when Gawain asks, as he's about to die, is this really all there is? And the Green Knight, like all proper mystics, replies with a question. Though I suspect in this case, what else ought there be, in fact, is a rhetorical question, which means it isn't a question at all. We all know the answer. I have a less easily answered question for you. How are you? And if you're clever and respond in some echo of the Green Knight with, how should I be? You have been seduced into my game, much as Gawain was seduced into the knight's. So thank you for asking, and I will now tell you how you should be. Or at least how you are, and this is how you are. You are blessed. To live in this world rich with life, emotion, and memory, this beautiful world of infinite complexity made easy, soaked through with enchantment and terror, with simple pleasures and subsistence tasks, with deep breaths, sun-buttered fields, tides, and the persistent sacrifice of prey, love, lamentation, you are blessed. Our bone story this morning was inspired by the ancient tale of the Green Knight as I first heard it rendered by a stunning 2021 film. And because it takes place at the intersection of ecology and eco-spirituality and ethics, or I should say, it takes place at the intersection of eco-spirituality as represented by the Green Knight and ethics as represented by Gawain's mortal quest, the tale becomes, for me, a metaphorical meditation on our present and perhaps, given the age of the source material, perpetual ecological dilemma. You'll recall that the tale begins when the Green Knight rides into King Arthur's hall and challenges anyone present to single combat, but there's a catch, of course, a game within a game. The champion who accepts the challenge must seek out the Green Knight in a year in the Green Chapel and receive in return whatever blow the champion presently could deliver to the Green Knight. Gawain, impetuous and glory-hungry, accept that provocation, whereupon the Green Knight lowers his head, extends his neck, so that his verdant noggin can be hacked off. When Gawain hesitates, the knight challenges his honor, questions it, which is quite a slight to insecure Gawain. And so he finds himself, Gawain does, 1 year later on a quest for the Green Chapel in order that the Green Knight might return the decapitatory blow. As happens on these quests, he encounters a number of challenges and he fails every single one of them, but is protected by a magic belt. So his failure isn't physical as much as it is moral. That's the device of the belt. We see that it does not matter in some sense what Gawain does. He will live. No matter what he does, he will live. And so the emphasis, what matters, shifts to how Gawain is. And he's not great, Bob. For while Gawain survives, he also fails each encounter. His failures are moral and spiritual. He betrays, he cowers, he dismisses that which he should respect. He treats beauty as utility, takes love for granted, ignores wisdom, and centers himself at every turn. His being, how he is, shapes his impact for sure, and he is, in short, a rake, not a knight. Because one lusts for what one lacks, Gawain lusts for honor. But he lacks it because he does not understand it. He thinks honor is reputation and glory. He thinks honor is about him. And so it evades him because honor is not about glory. It is not self-interested. Honor is other-interested. It's not to say other-abdicating, but other-interested, deeply considerate. And honor is not even primarily about deeds. Rather, as the tale demonstrates, honor is about spiritual integrity, which is about relational integrity, which is about recognizing our interdependence, which is expressed by the green. Deeds can be effective, but they're band-aids. Whereas our essential how we are, your perspective, that is where true healing can be found. What the belt illuminates, or the stole illuminates as a plot device, is that honor is not primarily about what you do. Rather, honor is about how you are. Honor is about how we understand ourselves in the world. So seen from that eco-spiritual perspective, we find that honor transforms consequence into reciprocity. Other interestedness is where honor is rooted, and that turns our sense of consequence, which is an end, into a sense of reciprocity, which is perpetual. And this carries us into some territory that I think is sort of tricky to articulate, so apologies in advance. How you are gives your deeds not only consequence, but character. And this is the spiritual version of process over product. Honor is about your manner, your essential point of view. How you are is about the essential quality of your relationship to the ever-changing world. I call this your essential how. And here we must navigate paradox. The nature of your essential how you are deeply, your perspective, because it is essential, is not contingent on circumstance. But it is also entirely relational. To me, that's the paradox, right? It is somehow entirely relational, but non-contingent. And I think this might be solved by understanding that your essential how is generated from a non-contingent soul center. And even then, it is revealed and expressed within your relationship. So it comes from deep inside, but it is borne witness by how you relate to everything. So why is that important to know? Seems a bit abstract and philosophical, but I think it is important to know because while it's true that better days make it easier to stay in touch with your essential how, who you are at heart should not depend on your bad day. Now, this is easier to say from my position of privilege, but that does not make it untrue. How you are should not depend on your bad day, and this is critical because if how you are is beyond contingency, beyond the stuff happening around you, beyond context, that means it operates in a timeless category. How you are is on the wavelength of the eternal. How you are is apart, aside from life and death. Gawain fails to understand this even as he finds the Green Chapel and offers his neck to the axe of the Green Knight. Protected by his bewitched belt, he is still betraying the game that brought him to this moment, seeing consequence rather than reciprocity, attending only to himself and thus not even seeing the greater game. He is a coward in the face of his honor, which is a soul death, a death of the timeless within us, a death of our piece of the eternal. Yet in that moment, at least in the film, Gawain sees his life flash before his eyes, his life if he kept the belt on. He sees himself surviving the encounter, becoming a king, getting married, having children, growing wealthy. But having failed in his ordeal with his own honor, Gawain is not shifted in how he is. Persistently self-interested, a zombie-souled rake to the last. Thus his love is hollow, his wealth is hollow, his reign is hollow, his life is hollow, his society is hollow, his eternity is hollow, and death still has the final say and says it. So it doesn't matter if it's today or decades hence, Gawain's head rolls. What matters is the character of life in the meanwhile. It's not about our survival. It's about getting right with the world, with the green, with the face of nature, with our embeddedness in the land, with our emergence from and dissolution into the green that underlies it all. Getting right with that. And so with that wisdom gained, Gawain removes the enchanted belt and submits to his reckoning, his reconciliation, and finally earns his honor. Now, the vision that grants this insight is prompted by that bit of dialogue right before the axe swings, where in one last act of self-interest, Gawain asks, "Is this all there is?" It's a reasonable thing to wonder. Not to the Green Knight, who replies, "What else ought there be?" I love that line. That line brings me a lot of peace. As I see it, it is not an admission of nihilism or even a reckoning with mortality, but rather an affirmation of the world and an invitation to enter the intricate and stunning, though not always painless, elegance of life itself. What else ought there be? An invitation to enter into relationship with the green that will cover our gravestones with life, with us. I mean, look around. There's bacteria, blood, oxygen, chlorophyll, flesh, hope, fear, love, light, and water. What else ought there be? With this wisdom, Gawain can willingly fulfill his bargain. He has shifted his essential how. And so can we. And like Gawain, we cannot opt out of fundamental reciprocity of interdependence. We can ignore it and select for self-interest and live as though dead and find ourselves prisoners of circumstance and time again. Or we can bear witness to the interdependence of all being and feel that witness ripening our spiritual center as it invites us to participate in the divine grace of reciprocity. So again, the paradoxical truth that reflecting on biological and material contingency gives rise to spiritual non-contingency. And this brings us, at least in my way of thinking, to our likely extinction, which is a cheery thought, I know. But given the calamitous state we have driven our planet to, I do not know if we're going to make it. Actually, that's not true. I do know. We're not. But we always, never were. That is not how the green works. So how do we respond to that context, that consequence? Shall we fight with our every fiber, or at least some spare fibers, to reverse that trajectory? Or maybe we ought to subscribe to a life of hedonistic indulgence. Despair is always an option. Or hope. I suppose there's a chance that some new technology or policy or plutocrat saves us all. But even if those things happen, it won't matter. Without changing our essential patterning within us, it just delays the inevitable and makes the interim despicable. The face of nature says what we take will be taken from us. A cut for a cut. What we do unto the world, we do unto ourselves, and we now are blowing the tops off of the mountains, spraying forests with glyphosate. We turn natural processes into trash. The exchange for a cut of a cut for a cut is an ontological law. Remember the word ontology, the study of being itself. The exchange of a cut for a cut is an ontological law. As you do unto the world, so the world does unto you. We are not separate. When this law is ignored, our essential how is revealed as self-interest. And self-interest is self-terminating. When this law is recognized, spirituality is given the opportunity to emerge if our essential how responds to and partakes in the eternal. Other interestedness, spiritual considerateness, honor refocuses destiny from victory to depth. Honor refocuses destiny from victory to depth and naturally yields integrity and, broadly speaking, life. What else ought there be? Somebody scored right there. Maybe it was me. The deep knowledge of Gawain and the Green Knight tells us that the only chance we have is to stop prioritizing survival and shift our focus to how we are in the world for its own sake. We may find that this shift shapes our deeds in such a way that survival occurs as a happy externality. After all, it's not that how we are has no impact. It does, and it has. This is not a prescription for ecological hospice. Hospice, in this case, lingers in the wrong question. I think this perspective rather heralds a depth of experience that is its own consequence, and therefore of eternal quality. As such, I hope it offers an antidote to despair, an invitation to experience that eternal, and possibly our best hope to continue to have that opportunity. And so I ask again, how are you? Are you dying in consequence or thriving in reciprocity? Are you other interested? For when you are, you will find that you are the sun-buttered field. You are a deep breath. You are the persistent sacrifice of prey. You are the brief lives of butterflies and their role in the perpetuation of life. You are love. Lamentation, heartbreak, imagination, eternity, and unspeakable beauty. You are Gawain and the Green Knight. I invite you to please rise and body your spirit and contemplate all this in song. As we leave this sacred time and place, this green chapel that we have built together, may we discover our reciprocity, lose our heads, and find ourselves in deep and eternal other interest. Let us go in peace and let us go singing.